Welcome back to Beyond Chronic Burnout, the podcast where we go beyond the surface of burnout, digging deep into the strategies and tools leaders and individuals need to flourish forward, creating healthier, happier, and energized teams and lives with a dose of play, joy, and laughter along the way. I'm your Chief Wellbeing Officer and host, Carole Jean Whittington. Today, we're diving into a powerful conversation centered around community and connection, an essential topic for anyone in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging roles, or those looking to step into advocacy. Joining me is my guest, Dr. Scott Frasard, an experienced educator and advocate who has dedicated his work to fostering understanding through meaningful dialogue. Scott's journey into neurodiversity began with his identification as autistic at age 48, and he's here to share insights from his groundbreaking book, A Reflective Question to Ponder, which offers over 1,200, that's right, 1,200 questions designed to spark connections and deepen understanding. Community and connection thrive on dialogues that explore a variety of perspectives, and that's the key reason for today's conversation. Scott will guide us on how to create these opportunities through reflective questioning, ultimately shifting perspectives for a more inclusive and diverse world. If you're passionate about fostering connections that lead to understanding and change within your organization or community, this episode is a must listen. Let's get started.
Step out of the shadows, feel the power rise, catch the spark inside you, let your spirit fly. Beyond the chronic burnout, Carole Jean's your guide. Find your steady rhythm, life's joy on the tide. Flourish forward, bright and bold. Leave the burnout far behind. In this journey, hearts unfold. Yours, seek and find.
My friend, my darling friend, one of my besties in the whole wide world, Scott Frasard. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carole Jean. I'm excited to be here with you today.
I love what we're talking about this whole month of October, connection and community. Because when I think about connection and community, I think about you. You are what I think of because of the way you approach connection and community, the way that you create conversations in this really beautiful, non-judgy way. Like, I'm just asking, I'm just curious. Can you tell me what you think about this, or what's your perspective on this? And then when somebody shares a differing perspective, I mean, the way that you respond down in the comments, like there is so much goodness. There's so much beauty in what connection and conversation really is and how it can transform the way people view one another. Because you are the gorgeous author, look at that, of this fabulous book, A Reflective Question to Ponder. And I love that this is this gorgeous collection of how we can start to have this same kind of connection, community, and conversation that you so beautifully model. So Scott, tell us, before we jump into, why you choose to advocate this way, tell us a little bit about A Reflective Question to Ponder.
So I didn't set out to write this book. It just kind of wrote itself based on my advocacy practice, if you will, up until that point. I was asking multiple questions daily. And it just hit me one day. It's like, I've written so many of these questions and had so many dialogues with so many people from across the world. I bet I could fill a book. And I didn't realize how many I actually had until I downloaded everything. And I was like, wow. And while the book has 1,225 questions in there, I probably had closer to 3,000 or even 3,200 questions total. Um, and so, based on the experiences that I had in those conversations and how much material I had, I'm like, how can I expand the reach and get more people talking about differing perspectives in, like you said, a non-judgmental way? And I thought, well, why not put it in a book? Why not help people do the thing that I was doing? Because I'm not the sole proprietor of and the only practitioner of this. And that's what really started this all. And not only does it have a 1,200 plus questions that I wrote, but it also includes chapters on my own journey and my own perspectives on things such as, and I know we're going to get to it later, but things such as why everyone's perspective matters, a different way of looking at neurodiversity in general, or just how we exist from a neurologic perspective in general, around advocacy, supporting, just all of these sorts of things, and sharing some of the thoughts that I have that are all informed from the community. And that's the key. And for those that don't know me, I actually came from a medical background. I spent 22 years as a paramedic. And during that time, I learned and was taught, the neurodiversity, autism in particular, is a deficit. It's a problem that needs to be treated. So I was firmly entrenched into that medical model. But then after I was identified myself and after I listened to the community, I changed. And I wanted to see how can we replicate that experience to others who were just as entrenched as I was in that medical model of thinking.
And that is one of the things that I love, is because not only are you sparking conversations, but the body of work in this book, a reflective question to ponder, is sparking conversations in all kinds of places, including my alma mater at LSU, Louisiana State University, where you got a wonderful message not long ago and shared with me, hey, we're going to be using your book. Why don't you share?
Yes. And, I see it in social media as well. And it thrills me. I don't care who gets the credit, as long as people are talking and asking questions and being inquisitive. And since I started doing it and really being a player, if you will, in the advocacy world, I don't know that I go so far as to say I'm an influencer, but I see more and more people doing that. And that just thrills me so much that other people are doing this too, because that means more people are having conversations and, most importantly, are listening.
I think that's the key, is the reciprocity of, listening as well as sharing, and sharing in a vulnerable way that allows other people to be vulnerable. And so that we are getting more to an authentic conversation and connection between people. And we're bridging places in divides we didn't even know were existing because of our perceptions and because we were holding it in silence and trying to navigate, or believing that, gee, everybody believes what I believe. Nobody could possibly be thinking anything different than I do.
Yes. And, you bring up a really good point. And it leads to building trust. If you and I, for example, saw very different perspectives of any given topic, if I showed that vulnerability, which actually I believe is a strength, not a weakness, if I showed that vulnerability and said, Carole Jean, tell me why you believe that. Now I'm creating a safe environment because I have invited a differing perspective and I'm listening to you. And you know what? That, whether I accept or not accept your perspective, that's informing my point of view. and my worldview, which transcends everything in my world. And in building that trust, you're more likely to reciprocate than if I just say, you know what, no, you're wrong. This is what you need to do. And that's what I see so many advocates. And I do believe there's a time and place, but for that unilateral or unidirectional advocacy where here's what you need to believe about autism, that's just not going to fly. And so the more people we have doing that, listen and let me hear others' perspectives, the better. Because when it all boils down to the brass tacks, I do believe everybody has the autistic person's best interest in mind in terms of we want to help you. What that help is, what it looks like, how it's done, that's where we differ. But we need to explore those so we can understand what that focus of helping autistic people is really all about.
You know, that's some place that I think you and I really have connected on over the last few years since we met. And it's that curiosity. You know, it is a foundational piece, and I say compassionate curiosity. It's a foundational piece of what I've created and how you take the journey out of burnout. It's also a foundational piece of Whittington well-being is compassionate curiosity. And you take that in this beautiful direction of curiosity rather than assertions. So I think let's start with, for the giggles of it, define assertion. What is it when we make assertions?
So the way I look at assertions is making a statement of absolute fact. This is what is. And if you think about it, I'm sure everyone has seen, if not, you can search for it online. Imagine two people standing on either side of a number that's drawn on the ground. To you, it looks like a 6. To me, it looks like a 9. We're both right and we're both wrong. But if I were to say, this is a 6, Carole Jean, there's no way it's a 9. Look at it. I don't know what you're seeing, but look at it. This is a 6. We get nowhere. But if I were to say, well, why do you think it's a 9? And you say, well, come over here. Look at it through my lens. And I walk over to your side and go, oh, I can see why you say it's a 9 because it looks just like a 9. And then I can say, well, come over here and let me show you why I think it's a 6. And you look at it and go, wow, I can see that. Take that same concept with anything associated with autistic support, advocacy, experiences, all that sort of stuff. And it just changes how we go about everything related to autism.
Well, and then I can interject here. Then my brain looks at that and goes, well, it can actually be 6 and 9 simultaneously. Let's look at it from up here. And we look down and go, oh, and it's not just a 6 and a 9. It's an infinity sign.
Yes. You know, I do believe, and I talk about this in my chapter on All Perspectives Are Valid, chapter 8. I do believe in multiple things being simultaneously accurate or correct or true. And the key to that when it comes to it and why I say all perspectives are valid is for that person, that is their lived reality. So it is not my place, nor should it be, to deny somebody of their lived reality, but rather to really explore why they have that reality.
Yeah. Scott, when we talk about assertions and it's, you know, that perspective of, okay, this is the truth. This is, you know, my perspective, my reality, and this is the only one. What is the detriment that you see most often in advocacy work when that's the perspective?
That's hard to sum up in one thing because I think it has far-reaching tentacles. But two things in particular. Number one, it reinforces this stereotype, for lack of better terms, but reinforces the stereotypical notion that all autistic people are the same. Because there's all these advocates that are telling me this is what it is. And whether you're asserting things and I'm asserting something else that's different, what people see in that moment is the monolith, and this is what it is. When in reality, we know that how autistic people experience the world and express themselves in the world and engage, interact with the world is different. And while we have a lot of commonalities, the intensity of the commonalities, the presence or absence of those commonalities, and the end result of them vary. So it's hard to make an assertion that is true for more than just a subsection of the population. So that's one thing. And I lost my track of thoughts. So ask your question one more time, please.
So what are some of the impediments that assertions create in advocacy work?
So that was one, and then the other part of it is the squeakiest wheel gets the oil. So depending on who that advocate is and what they are asserting, whether it's true or not for them or for the majority, that's who gets heard. We know that there are a number of very large, very well-funded, very powerful advocacy organizations that don't really have the autistic person's voice in mind, but they have the ears of the majority of the population, to include those who legislate policy and that sort of stuff. So there's that danger as well. And if they are wielding that assertion approach versus a dialogic, exploring approach, we may move things in a direction that has a very negative impact on our community.
I think those are probably the two biggest impacts for sure when we are approaching conversations and creating dialogue with assertions. So with that in mind, and curiosity being the antithesis, right?
Yes.
Go ahead. Sorry, you wanted to
I was going to say, what you said made me think of one more thing is there are a lot of advocates, whether they are advocates who are also autistic or not. When we take that assertional approach, we can start to build or continue the animosity that exists. And if you're asserting one thing and I'm asserting something else, there's going to be friction. And we hear that a lot in the community. And I have some thoughts about whether, there's infighting that really exists or not. I don't really think it is. It's that we have different people making different assertions, and collectively there is a lack of dialogue and listening.
Yes, I agree. Because there is a lack of allowance and space to do so in a safe container. Yes. In a brave container, right?
Yes.
So talk to us about the antithesis of assertions in this discussion, which is curiosity. What is curiosity exactly? I mean, I think we all know what it is to be curious, like, I wonder, but what's the position in your context of taking curiosity into advocacy?
Sure. So I'll preface it by saying, with taking that assertional approach, we are having a discussion, which is a unilateral, here's what I believe and thus you should believe it. So in a dialogue, there's a winner, there's a loser, and each person is trying to convince the others of this is the correct thing to accept. Whereas in that curiosity or a dialogic approach, it's, okay, I have my beliefs. I have what I believe is the truth according to my world experiences. But you know what? Let me just set that aside for a minute and let me ask you a question and listen to what Carole Jean believes. Now, I've in doing that, not only do I have that safe space to explore, but then we build that trust so we can start exchanging the ideas, and that's where it really happens. So instead of building a case for why you're correct, we are exchanging ideas to whether we take that in and change our own worldview or just add it to our arsenal, or arsenal is probably not the right word, but add it to our body of knowledge that we currently have, because it's going to be useful somewhere or valuable somewhere. By having a dialogue, we're not necessarily saying we're going to accept a different perspective, but that could be an outcome. Either way, we're enriching our worldview and we're building bridges with others.
When we put this into the context of really discussing differing opinions around autism, because this is one of the things that I think was really jarring for me personally when I first came into the online autism community, several years ago. And it was still pre-pandemic, folks, when there were still a lot of like Facebook groups more than anything else. And there were conversations being had. And, I think it's one of those things where we are given a label or an identifier, or we find a descriptor, a label or identifier that makes sense. Oh, that speaks to my experience. And then we go out into the world to go find more of that experience. And then we also run up against the people telling us our experience is wrong, or the word that we use to search, to learn more was wrong. And therefore we're wrong and bad because we used it. And it's really harmful in the sense that type of assertions, right? Or lack of curiosity or compassionate curiosity, as I would call it, takes people who are hurting, who are looking for answers, who are seeking something from only what they know at the moment, but they're looking to understand and learn more. But then you're told you're wrong, you're bad, that's not right. And then you're like, well, I don't know what to do, or I'm just not going to do anything because this felt horrible. I was just attacked in a comment section and I was just dogpiled over a word that I didn't know that was a bad word. Not even that it's a bad word, but that it's just a word that people don't like right now.
Yeah. I think at least taken to an extreme that can create class warfare, for example. It certainly shuts down any productive dialogue that could happen, and reinforces negative stereotypes about the autistic community. And none of those is going to help anybody, autistic or not, to be quite honest.
So what's the most important thing here in the conversation around a true dialogue? What is it that having these differing perspectives around autism, why is that so important? I mean, I know we've got like duh, Carole Jean, it's like obvious, right? It's like, this is how we all grow together, but it goes beyond that. And I know that you talk about that. So what's the true importance here?
The true importance is, if we think about it through the autistic lens, or really any neurodivergent neurotype lens, is we're all unique. As humans, we're all unique. Nobody, even identical twins who live their entire life in this exact same environment, nobody has the exact same experiences. And I'm trying to find the right words to express my thoughts, but I think if we don't open space for dialogue and talk about these experiences, and even if we don't get into the whys or the assumptions that inform those whys, if we can't even talk about the experiences, then nothing's going to change, and we're always going to have people who are marginalized, who are exploited, people who are seen as defective. All of those are extremely hurtful, and it is largely why autistic people statistically have a shorter lifespan than non-autistic people.
Now you're touching on the heart of why it's so important.
Yes.
In my world, anyway.
Yes.
And that is because of not just the longitude of our life, but the quality of the life that we lead and we experience in that full life.
And
I think so many things are hurting that right now.
Yes. Along with that is a thought that you just spurred in me is it's okay to be different in all of its flavors. Not just in, well, you speak a different language. That's an easy one to put your fingers on. But every infinite number of ways that people can be different at any point in time in their life. I think humanity needs to accept that people are just different. And instead of trying to change them, wouldn't it just be much easier if we had a different perspective, a different mental model of operating and go, okay, Carole Jean is different for these reasons. What's next on TV? Not even make it an issue. And hey, do you need help? Let me help you. That kind of thing. And if you're helping others, others are helping you. And I just think living more simply like that is better for everybody, not just the autistic community.
I agree. And I think one of the biggest barriers that I've experienced for myself, now I will own this all day long because this was where I started. It's not where I am today. It's a whole different awareness, but I think this is one of the biggest barriers to this compassionate curiosity and a reflective dialogue. And that is this fear, this uncomfortableness, this I'm not safe if I realize that maybe, or I start to see that maybe the perspective I held wasn't the best one. Maybe it actually hurt people. Maybe I've hurt myself with it. And to be able to acknowledge that I had that perspective and then be able to go, okay, I feel comfortable to change this perspective. And I can acknowledge that, because it's like, if I believe and agree that something you're saying is different and it's okay, and that maybe I want to consider believing differently, that if I believed in a way that maybe wasn't the best, that maybe I could be, quote unquote, wrong about everything else I believe. And then that challenges my identity and who I know myself to be. And that's like so disrupting that how do we begin to even have some of these conversations when the big threat is the fear that I'm not safe and I could be so wrong. And if I'm wrong about this, I could be wrong about everything. And then that's just, my whole identity is just disintegrated.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest barriers, is that cognitive dissonance that comes with learning something new. And it doesn't matter what it is, big or little. And being comfortable with not being right or not having a perspective that fits everybody else. Hell, even for that matter, getting rid of this idea of right and wrong. That would be such a huge...
Yes, could we please do that?
Yeah.
Could we just please do that? If we could just agree on one thing in the world, it's that there's no right, there's no wrong.
Exactly.
At least to like the majority of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And we want to run out and like end someone.
and like with what I do with my advocacy is turn that into an opportunity for a dialogue.
Are you ready to optimize your schedule for work-life success and harmony? If so, join us for our upcoming 2-day workshop on November 9th and 10th. As we head into the holiday season, it can feel like there's not enough time to get everything done. With KPIs to meet and goals to complete, it's easy to feel like your time is slipping through your fingers. And in the holiday chaos, it can feel impossible to find time for yourself. It's time to take charge of your day and align your professional and personal goals. You're running out of time to meet your KPIs and goals for the year. You're juggling leadership responsibilities and projects during the busiest time of year. Introducing the 2-day Optimize Your Schedule workshop. In this workshop, you'll learn improved decision-making and delegation techniques. Regain control over your daily routines. Overcome the internal resistance that affects your energy and relationships. Walk away with a personalized plan for clarity and focus. Finish the year strong and transform how you approach each day. Are you ready to transform how you approach delegation and leadership, even amidst the holiday chaos? Join us for this 2-day workshop and learn how to optimize your schedule for work-life success and harmony. Don't wait. Click the link now to register for the Optimize Your Schedule workshop and finish this year leading the way. So that brings us to this next great discussion point, which is why you believe all perspectives are valid. I love this.
Yeah,
this is important. This kind of goes to that we were just talking about, the safety factor, right?
Exactly. And that's why I dedicated an entire chapter to this is, again, I do believe that there are multiple realities. An infinite number of things can be true at the same time for different people, even for the same person. The room can be both cold and hot at the same time. Think about when you've
had 50. I know that.
Yes. Think about having a fever. You can be both cold and hot at the same time. And, cognitively, that shouldn't make any sense, but it's reality. And I believe in order to have a true dialogue and not try to convince somebody else that your perspective is true, to have that true dialogue, we have to accept the premise that there are multiple realities. And for those people that hold those realities, that is their absolute truth. So if as soon as we start saying, well, two things. As soon as we start saying that, okay, that's not a valid argument or that's not a valid perspective to hold, we're shutting down dialogue. We're shutting down any opportunity of carrying this conversation to other places. And then the other thing with that is, and I just had a senior moment and forgot exactly what I was going to say, if we do shut people down and say, well, that's not a valid perspective to hold, then number one, I'm not going to be open to that because I've already made a decision without seeing the behind the scenes. And so I'm not going to be open to new ideas or new perspectives, just like that person's not going to be open to hearing mine. The other part of it is also it's, and I keep losing my train of thought. I do apologize.
It's late in the afternoon. It happens to me all the time.
Exactly. So
we just roll with it, baby.
Yeah, exactly. This is a conversation, not a Hollywood production.
Wait, what? I work real hard to up my production level. What do you mean? I'm just kidding.
Exactly. And you do a wonderful job. I do remember now. A lot from what I have seen, people conflate what I believe to be inaccurately conflate validity and right and wrong. And those are two totally separate concepts. So and even include this moral element of it, like somebody may believe that in a particular culture, for example, eating certain things is just morally wrong, and to have any perspective of what's wrong with eating that is just taboo. You can't do it. And for them, that's their truth. Who am I to say otherwise? I hold a different perspective, and we can have a dialogue around that. So I think a lot of times people conflate validity with right and wrong, and it all boils down to these are perspectives.
Yes. One of the things that in our inclusive communication ecosystem, Dr. Ali Arena and I talk about in communication in particular, when we have conflict, one of the biggest things that comes up that consistently is a foundation of conflict, continuing conflict, is this place where the individual gets entrenched in their rightness.
Yes.
And then everything going forward is this defense of my rightness. And ultimately it is this wounding of, I'm not being seen, I'm not being heard, I'm not being understood. And so I have to get louder, I have to get more vehement, I have to continue to be as aggressive, maybe even, or loud, or confrontational, or a million different approaches that we can have, so that I'm simply seen, heard, understood. And it really isn't about the rightness of it. It's that someone sees me just as I am and allows me to be just as I am in this moment, because we're going to be a different person in the next moment. But in this moment, I need someone to acknowledge me.
Exactly. And that's, again, that difference between dialogue and discussion is, in a dialogue, we can all be who we are, our true authentic self, and know that we can share our perspectives so others get to see who we really are and appreciate us for who we are, and really have the opportunity to explore our the beliefs, values, and assumptions behind all of that, and not just what we want to believe.
Because one of the biggest benefits, as you just highlighted, of dialogue is that not only are we getting to learn and discover and explore other people, but we are learning and discovering more about ourselves in the dialogue. Because ultimately it's a mirror. If you get activated by something that someone says and you feel like, oh my gosh, I know that's not right, then it's this beautiful opportunity to get compassionately curious and go, why did I respond so viscerally to that statement?
I experienced that many times over my journey these last few years after learning I'm autistic. But one in particular that really illustrates that is, again, coming from the medical field, I was always taught that medical model, deficiency, and it's people with autism or people who suffer from autism or that sort of stuff, that person first. You're more than your diagnosis. You're more than your autism. And that was the language that I continued to use. And then as I started learning other people out there like me in all of these different communities, and I started listening to them, and then it started to, what I was hearing from you and other people, for example, is, there's this thing called identity first language, and it's I'm autistic and not I have autism because I can't just turn it off or set it aside. That makes a lot of sense given my world experiences, my worldviews. And okay, that does feel better. I like it. I'm going to start using it. And so I don't know what I don't know until I can talk about it, hear it, experience it, engage with others about it, and it makes all the difference in the world.
Yes, it does. And what I love is that all of this, all of the beautiful things that are the sparkly whiz pops, gorgeous genius, brilliance of your brain and your heart, culminated in something recently that you would have heard me cheering out loud if you were outside of my house when I read the Autistic Bill of Rights. Tell us about this, Scott Frasard.
Yes. And I have to say, I may have been the person or a person that has put these words onto paper electronically and in print now. But really, these are the words of the community that I heard because I'm listening.
And because you asked?
Yeah, if I didn't ask, then, I would never have known these things. But it's a list of what I heard as being 14 of the most prominent, most impactful, most powerful, most meaningful things to an autistic person. And what I believe is one of the things that the lack of differentiates us from those that are not autistic, and what is often leveraged to ostracize or other us. And so I just, because I was listening and I was like, okay, I'm seeing things, I'm hearing things, and I need to share these observations with others. And that's really what started it.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, will you read us the Autistic Bill of Rights that you put together?
Yes. It may take a couple moments if that's okay.
Oh, it's perfectly okay.
So first, let me read the preamble to this. It says, every person, regardless of neurology, possesses inherent value, potential, and rights. In recognition of the unique experiences and challenges faced by autistic individuals in the world, often not designed for them, this Autistic Bill of Rights affirms autistic individuals' rights to accept, respect, and support the values of their neurodiversity. And for that, I really think it puts an exclamation point on, we are people, and we're just as deserving of every other thing that everyone else in the world gets to enjoy. So the first one is the right to exist. And for that description, autistic people have the unequivocal right to exist as they are without fear of eradication or forced normalization. Autistic traits and characteristics are integral aspects of their identity and must be accepted and celebrated. The second one is the right to life and preservation. Autistic individuals have the inviolable right to life, survival, and physical safety. This encompasses the right to live in secure, supportive environments, free from threats, violence, or neglect. Their lives must be valued and protected on an equal basis with others, under all circumstances and at all stages of life. Number 3 is the right to identity. Autistic people have the indisputable right to identify as autistic and to view their autism as an integral and valued part of their identity. Number 4 is the right to self-expression. Autistic individuals have the right to express themselves freely and authentically, and to have their unique communication methods acknowledged and respected. Number 5 is the right to autonomy and self-determination. Autistic individuals have the right to self-determination, autonomy, and agency over their bodies, their minds, and their lives. This includes making decisions regarding therapies, medical treatments, and daily living routines. Number 6, the right to accessibility and accommodation. Autistic people have the right to accessible environments, services, and tools that respect their sensory communication and processing differences. This includes adaptive technology, quiet spaces, and flexibility in educational and professional settings. We're halfway there. Number 7, the right to social inclusion. Autistic people have the right to full and active participation in community activities, social discourse, and all aspects of societal life. They should be provided necessary support and accommodations to actively participate and have their voices heard. That's a key one. The right to communicate is number 8. Autistic individuals have the right to communicate in their preferred manner, be it through speech, sign language, alternative and augmentative communication devices, or other forms of expression. Society must strive to understand and value all forms of communication. Number 9 is the right to education and employment. Autistic people have the right to inclusive, flexible, and supportive educational and work environments that recognize their strengths and accommodate their needs. They should have access to educational and professional opportunities that foster growth and development, leading to meaningful, fulfilling employment. Number 10 is the right to freedom from harm. Autistic individuals have the right to live free from physical, emotional, and psychological harm, including harmful interventions, restraint, seclusion, or discrimination of any kind. Number 11 is the right to health care. Autistic people have the right to comprehensive health care that acknowledges and respects their neurodiversity, sensory sensitivities, and communication needs. They should have equitable access to physical and mental health services with consent and autonomy at the forefront. The right to policy inclusion is number 12. Autistic individuals have the right to be included in public policy decision-making processes, particularly those that directly affect them. Their views and experiences must be genuinely considered and valued in shaping policies that influence their lives. Number 13 is the right to advocacy and representation. Autistic people have the right to self-advocacy and fair representation in all forums. Autistic voices should lead the discussion on autism, and their experiences should shape policies, practices, and narratives about autism. And finally, number 14 is the right to privacy. Autistic individuals have the right to privacy and confidentiality in all aspects of life. Personal details, including their formal autism identification, should be shared only with explicit consent. And to round this out, I say, by affirming these rights, we strive toward a more equitable and inclusive society, one in which every autistic individual is respected, valued, and allowed to thrive as their authentic selves. We reject the commoditization of autism and commit to a world that honors and nurtures neurodiversity in all its forms.
And if you, like me, just experienced a huge emotional surge as you heard those, you're not alone. I don't ever read these. I don't ever hear them, that it doesn't really strike a very deep chord within me as an autistic person. Thank you so much for that, Scott.
You're
that
welcome.
is a gift.
I thank you very much. And even though, I put pen to paper to collect these words, I still get goosebumps when I read them. And probably the thing that makes it so powerful to me is, number one, I've experienced a lack of these things throughout my lifetime. But these are the things that these are the things that I've heard overwhelmingly from the vast majority of the community of, I don't have these. I don't have
Yes.
this access to healthcare like other people do, communication like other people do, all of these things. And after I first shared these, I would I did receive a number of criticisms of, well, they're just, those are just what everybody should have. Why is it unique to autistic people? It's like, well,
Because we don't have it.
we don't have it. So many people are being othered and oppressed because we are not given these things or afforded these opportunities. And so that's why I felt it was really important to put these in writing, codify them, if you will, and really make that bold statement of this is what we deserve. And yes, it's true that everyone deserves this, but we're part of that everyone, and we deserve this.
And we're currently not receiving it.
Amen.
One of the biggest ones, and you and I both come from a healthcare background, and to me that is having a voice in our own healthcare plan and giving consent for the things that work well for us. And there's so much more in that. I mean, there's so much. But the fact that it is put together so concisely and so clearly, and I haven't come across one neurodistinct person who hasn't read this that hasn't gotten deeply moved and very appreciative for having the words written and spoken and put down in a way that we can communicate and share them with others. So thank you so very much for that, Scott.
Thank you. To hear that compliment, just, I'm getting all the clumped here.
We do that to each other, don't we?
In all the best of ways. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I know that not only are you hot stuff over on LinkedIn, I mean, you kind of hot stuff everywhere, but you kind of hot stuff over on LinkedIn. And you also have a group for Reflective Question to Ponder. You got a group where people can come in and say, let's talk about this. But I think one of the most amazing things is, number one, I say that your book is just one of the most fabulous things. I absolutely adore it because of how you put it together, because it is a book to help other people also begin to explore their own reflective questions to ponder. They can use yours as a guide. You give them the way to start creating their own questions to start sharing and creating this dialogue. So be sure you go check out the show notes and go check out A Reflective Question to Ponder by Dr. Scott Frasard. It's available on Amazon and where you can get your digital books. And by the way, there's this really fancy foreword written by some girl from the deep south you might want to check out.
Who was it? Who was that? Let me look. Oh, that was you.
Little old me. And it was such an honor to be asked to write the foreword for this book, because I am probably I will just go out and say it. I know behind his wife, I'm the number one cheerleader this man has. Huge fan over here. So this book really will change so much around just how you communicate, not just with other people, but with yourself. Because I know as a late identified person over here, one of the things that I talk to so many people about every day in the work that I do to help all of us get out of burnout and get to that place where we are living the life that is truly ours, like where we hear and are living and stepping into every one of those 14 Bill of Rights items. And that is having that personal power and that agency and having that relationship with ourselves. And this book really is such a beautiful place to start for that, in my opinion. So
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. And you bring up a really good point. It's not just about questions to ask others, but about yourself too. And if I were to put myself into my own shoes 5 years ago, before I ever knew, there are so many of these questions that I would think, wow, I haven't really thought of it like that, or that has never crossed my mind. So it will introduce you to other concepts, ideas, perspectives that maybe you haven't even connected as being associated with the autistic culture or the autistic community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining me and sharing this conversation around a reflective question to ponder and how this really ties in so beautifully into our month of connection and community. Be sure you go check out Scott Frasard over on LinkedIn because he has super hot stuff, by the way. Go check out all of the great conversations he's having. Join in those reflective questions to ponder because there are thousands of them. You heard him. And you can go back in his post history and go find one and just read the comments. Look and see how Scott responds, how other people respond, how the back and forth goes in some of these really hot topics. You will be amazed at the beauty that emerges in some of these and start creating them in your life. Be sure you go check out whittingtonwellbeing.com, join our newsletter, get this month's download, which is your daily stress relief tracker, because there are so many places where we don't even realize our energy is leaking out, and that stress tracker is the quick, easy, amazing, powerful tool that will help you find them. Take care. We'll see you next time. As we wrap up this episode of Beyond Chronic Burnout, I want to remind you of your incredible brilliance. Embrace your uniqueness and know that your journey is one of strength and compassionate curiosity. I'm Carole Jean Whittington, and I'm so honored to be on this journey with you. Stay connected with me on LinkedIn. And for more energizing episodes, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube at Beyond Chronic Burnout. Let's continue thriving together, my friend. Remember, you have the power to break free from burnout and unleash your authentic self. Until our next engaging conversation, take care and keep shining brightly.
Thanks for being here. It's been quite a ride. Energy mastery, let's turn the tide. Top shelf guests, dropping wisdom bombs. Join us next week where the energy's strong.